It's Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome, everybody. Another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. UFC Saudi Arabia this past weekend. One shot to kill a legend. I don't know if I like that terminology, but it is what happened this past weekend. We'll talk about that fight and that statement, truth be told. Now let's look forward as well to UFC 312, Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Two very close fight the first time. A little bit of controversy maybe in the decision. Probably not. But we're definitely going to get into that fight and the co-main event as well. So we have a lot to talk about. With that being said, let's bring in the man. His name is on the marquee. Follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. What's up, pal?
Man, I love this little stretch we got going right now. You know, Saturday was absolutely perfect for me, man. I know it's tough because you don't get to necessarily go see the live event when it's over in Saudi Arabia. But when fights are on in the morning, I love that. Can just wake up first thing in the morning, throw on some UFC, watch that, and a good card, which we'll talk about. And then obviously I got to go jump on the mic at CFFC 139 in Philadelphia. So I got to do two things I love, watch the UFC, call some CFFC. And then now we roll right into a pay-per-view week, which I know we'll get to this as well. Maybe the pay-per-view card taking a little bit of heat. But those two title fights at the top, man, they're about as good as it gets. So I love what we got going on right now.
I have a feeling Sean Strickland's going to start selling that card this week.
You 100%, right? Dude, that man owns Fight Week. That man starts talking and people start paying attention. So you're 100% right about that.
So let's take a look back. I mean, I think we were all really excited, especially of the top three fights on the card.
Yeah.
And two didn't deliver. The top one did. Man, this heavyweight, before we even started talking about Adesanya and whatnot, this heavyweight division is driving me absolutely bonkers. All right. Because with that being said, you know, you had Pavlovich and Rosenstruck lined up. Now, Pavlovich, he needed to punch a ticket to be like, hey, that could have been a fluke. I lost to Volkov. I need to punch a ticket now. And he got the win. He got the win convincingly. Okay. But in the most boring fight you could watch out of two heavyweights. And with that being said, I don't know if it's Aspinall just struck a fear of losing into him that made him change the way that he fights. Because what I'm going to say in his last fight in a loss to Volkov and this fight, I never saw him with an overt fear of engaging. And I'm not saying he's scared, but there's definitely a lot more tentativeness, at least I think so, to engage than I saw before, which just skyrocketed him up the ranks earlier because he knew he had the power. And he goes, listen, I think I have the chin and I know I have the power. I'm going to go in and I'm going to knock people out. He's just not doing that anymore.
I know. And I think you laid it out perfect, right? Because I always hate the word fear or concern. I mean, look, we know anybody that's at the UFC level, they ain't scared of nobody, man. This is what they do for a living. But I love exactly what he said, the hesitation to engage. That was what made him special. That was what made him dangerous. That was what made people fear being against him. Again, not scared, but understanding the what was at risk when they went in there. And that's what made him an exciting contender, and it's just not there anymore. And you're right. I don't know if it was something in that Tom Aspinall fight that changed the psychology, and it happens. You know, it's a mental thing. There's so much of a mental side of this game, but this was a big opportunity. I feel like this fight was almost set up to allow him to take a step forward and prove that he was that guy, and he didn't do it.
With another guy who theoretically would stand and bang with you.
100%. Is Jairzinho Rosenstruck going to shoot in and take you? Like, are you concerned that, man, I really can't sit down on my punches because I know if I do, he's going to duck under and blast double me? Or, I mean, it's not going to happen. That's not what he does. You know, he's a kickboxer through and through. He's a striker. So, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed in this. And again, it just leaves. I mean, you know, we joked before about some of these heavyweight results lately that, you know, John Jones just sitting back in New Mexico going, oh, that's a couple more bucks coming my way. But it's true. Like, there are no fights that you want to see at heavyweight right now that you would really get excited about. I mean, I mentioned it, last week that, if Vadim Nemkov comes to the UFC, I would be interested in that. but we're hardcores talking about that. There's no casual fan that's just, rubbing their hands together. Can't wait to see Vadim Minkoff and Tom Aspinall. It's not happening. So right now, it is literally John Jones versus Tom Aspinall and nothing else in the heavyweight division. So I'm like you. I was a little bit disappointed because I thought this fight was set up for Sergei Pavlovich to kind of step forward again and prove that he's a guy. Man, Eric, I was working on my rankings this morning. I don't have them done yet. Once we get done recording, I'm going to finish up sending my votes off. There's 31 fighters in the UFC's heavyweight division right now. 31 athletes. That's it. I mean, half the division is ranked, and it's just there's just not a lot of intrigue right now in that division. There's some work to be done, and nothing happened in this fight to make this division more interesting.
Nothing is pushing that division forward. That's the disappointment here. Nothing is pushing it forward. And then let's go into the co-main. I think everybody, this to a degree, was the people's main event.
Right.
Shara Bullet, MVP, Michael Venom Page. And I'm not going to say this fight didn't deliver because from a technical standpoint, it 100% delivered. Michael Venom Page is so crafty and hard to figure out. And that jumping in and out shot that he has, it just puts people it just puts them in cement, and it makes them not scared, unwilling to engage, right? Because you need to stay. I always say this when I'm, either coaching fighters or jiu-jitsu students or talking fights with people. I'm like, you have to make a decision. You're either all the way out or you're all the way in. You have to make that decision, right? Now, if you're all the way in, you have to still be defensive, but you have to understand, where everything lies. And people who fight MVP, they're worried of getting all the way in, right? Or they're scared of the process that it's going to take to get all the way in because they can't find his pattern. They can't find his rhythm. And we were looking at a guy, Shara Bullet, who was like, hey, man, this guy ain't scared of anything, anyone or anything. And he couldn't solve the riddle. And this was a masterful performance by MVP. I think through the first round, Shara Bullet didn't hit him once. I think he had 0 strikes from the waist up in round number 1.
Yeah, it was one that I was really shocked. The line on this one, the betting odds on this, MVP was a big underdog, over plus 200. And I was just like, what? Like, I didn't understand that because the way their styles match up. And I think you said it right because it was technically very interesting to watch. Was it, the barn burner that maybe we hoped it would be? No, it had kind of fight of the night potential all over it. 2 incredibly exciting strikers, but it was a technical masterpiece. I think it's one reason, people always talk about, oh, bro, we got to see MVP and Wonder Boy, and MVP and Wonder Boy are both like, I don't know if our styles necessarily work out where it's going to be as fun as you think. And I think that's kind of what happened here, where it was, the scientific rhythm of it wasn't exactly as exciting as we thought we'd see, but it was a technical masterpiece. And it's interesting. MVP, moving up to middleweight, made it clear that's not really where he expects to be. He's going to go back down to welterweight, but just shows that, man, even at perhaps this kind of, advanced stage of his career, he's still somebody that really matters in the UFC, man. And, barely lost to Ian Machado Gary, made that an intriguing fight, had the win over Kevin Holland. He's a name that, if you weren't convinced that when he came over from Bellator, he was going to be somebody that mattered, I think you have to be at this point. He is somebody that matters. This wasn't the most exciting fight ever, but it was a brilliant performance from him. It was a big win from him. And, Shara Bullet is still intriguing. It's funny because Shara Bullet, I have felt bad about, because I haven't been able to, I just haven't seen that championship potential out of him. You know what I mean? Normally somebody's 15-0, you're like, oh man, this is the guy. I got to put all my chips on this guy. And he hasn't been that guy for me. I think he showed that maybe, he's still, a couple levels below championship material, but if the matchmaking is done correctly, he'll still be in some fun fights. He's obviously an exciting character. He's unique. He talked about having some injuries coming in, which, you always hate to hear that afterwards, but there's still a future for him. But I think he did show that he's not exactly, if you we're banking on him to be that next title winner. I don't know if he's necessarily that guy, but there's still fun fights for him.
It's hard to be that guy too, if you can't fight in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. That makes it difficult as well. And we understand there's some challenges there for him to compete in the U.S.
All right, let's get to the main event. Nassourdine Imavov, second round, TKO victory. Was it KO or TKO?
TKO.
TKO. Versus Israel Adesanya, and that made me think TKO. John McCarthy explained it to me best. Because the referee is the one who makes the official decision on whether it's a KO and a TKO. And most people think that a KO, they have to be unconscious for it to be a KO. It's not the case. The way it was explained to me best when Big John McCarthy personally trained me is TKO is when they're not defending themselves or intelligently defending themselves. And a KO is where they can't intelligently defend themselves. That's a good way of thinking about it. So most people think it's when you are knocked out. It's really not when the ref's looking at it on how to make the final decision.
And if Big John is dropping some knowledge, you soak in that knowledge and you utilize that because he is the reference point. Yep, he is the reference point.
Put it in my little journal. So when everybody says, "Why is this?" I could say because he couldn't defend himself at that point. So
who told you that's the way it was? Oh, it was the guy that wrote the rules. Yeah, the guy that actually made the rules. That was the guy that told me. So that's what I go with.
So this one hurt my heart. Like truth be told, and I wasn't necessarily rooting for Izzy, but I was rooting for vintage Izzy, right? Yeah. And what I think we got was a lot of that. Now, why the knockout happened, how the knockout happened, we can get into that. But I would say through round one, Izzy looked flawless. He looked amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, man. I think I was in the same boat as you. To be honest with you, I believe Nassourdine Imavov is a guy that's been vastly overlooked in the division, right? Not somebody that people talk about a lot. Maybe he's not a big talker. Obviously, he's not an English speaker. Whatever the reasons may be of why he hasn't gotten the respect. There's a lot of other characters in the middleweight division right now, which we'll get into. There are a couple of them fighting this week. So there's a lot of other people to talk about in that division. So I get it, but I feel like he's flown under the radar. But coming to this matchup, I really thought that Nassourdine had the ability to win the fight. But I thought, man, and you said it, I was like, man, if Izzy is vintage, if he is performing at that level, I think he can win this fight. And it felt to me like he was like on fight week, man. He just seemed relaxed. It seemed like he wasn't worried about all the pressures and the strains that he had on his shoulders to be a superstar, right? I mean, this guy was kind of transcending. He was becoming a mainstream name. And it felt like, some of that stuff kind of got to him at times in his career. And through that opening 5 minutes, I thought, oh, he's back. Like, he's good. He's looking good. I thought everything looked good up until it didn't, man. I really have trouble pointing out something where I think that, he's slipping, he's gone, he's not there. And then he got clipped.
And he got clipped hard. I know he had a little bit of a problem of a stoppage, but when there's a video out there. I don't have his problem with stoppage. Mark Goddard was right on top of the action. Izzy was face down. May have been building back up, but he was taking punches. He really built back up after the fight.
And it was that, and more than the shot that put him down, it was that shot on the ground. The right hand put him down, but that left on the ground was like, ooh, that was devastating right there.
Yeah. Now, he was intelligently defending himself. He had one hand up, but when you have somebody on a back mount just throwing bombs, what's the number one job of a referee? It's to make sure everybody goes home if they can that night. That's the job.
Crazy to think about it that way, but you're right, man. Fighter safety. I mean, there is a lot on the line there, man. And I know every fighter wants to be given every opportunity, right? I'm sure you've been in those rules meetings where people are saying, don't stop it early. Let me go out on my shield. But it's like, man, I know you want that. And I know you're a warrior at heart. But like you said, I got to make sure you get home safe.
Yeah. But for all those reasons, it really just kind of like, and then to top it off, you know where I'm going with this because I texted you in the moment. I said, did our girl Laura Sanko really have to do Izzy that way? Now, there's nothing wrong with what she did. It's just as a fan, like I just didn't like it. It was pre-choreographed. She had it written down somewhere because she pulled it out exactly when it needed to be pulled out. But Imavov stops Izzy. He goes down, goes to all knees, and he's so excited. And she reads the line. I say reads the line because I'm almost positive this is choreographed. One shot to kill a legend. And I go, I think I picked up my phone. Was that necessary? I texted you. And I mean, spectacular timing on the call, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't like it. Whoa.
It was one shot to kill your microphone right there.
One shot. I didn't like it. But she was right.
Yeah.
She was right.
Yeah.
So I'm actually pissed that she said it because I'm even more pissed that she's right. Now, Izzy watched the fight back and he heard that call. I don't know if you've seen that clip of him watching the fight back.
No, I was traveling home yesterday. I saw that he had posted, but I haven't seen the content yet. So how did you address
video
it?
of him watching the knockout? And when she said it, he turns to the person filming him and he goes, "I ain't dead yet."
Ooh,
not argumentative or not being pissed at it, but he just said it.
I get it.
But man, it hurt my heart because she could have been right in that situation. And this is a real going into this fight was the crossroads for Izzy, in my opinion. We're past that crossroads now, right? It is what it is, and can he build back? Yeah. But we always said he took time off, he healed, he was in the best shape of his life going in, and then the result is still the result. And for all those reasons, man, just as a purist and a guy who loves this sport, and I love when the greats are great. I'm not a fan of the New York Yankees, but I love the New York Yankees being good because like when the Yankees are good, baseball's good, and when the Lakers are good, the NBA is good. And when Izzy is on top, the UFC is good, right? It's just all correlates. And to see that past him now, it disappoints me.
Yeah, I 100% get where you're coming from because it's like you start thinking about what do you do at this point, right? I mean, we don't necessarily want to see Israel Adesanya, fighting down the division. Like you said, can he build his way back up? But you don't want to see that, right? I mean, it was tough to watch Anderson Silva at the end, hanging on longer than he should have. And Anderson Silva is one of the all-time greats. And obviously, I believe Israel Adesanya is one of the all-time greats as well. But you don't necessarily want to see them hanging on and just kind of toiling in mediocrity and going out there and facing number 9 in the division and seeing if they can potentially. But it's not what you expect out of these greats, right? And it's not where we've come to expect Israel Adesanya to be. So it's such a challenge because, like I said, if you look at that opening round, I don't think that he was fighting poorly. I don't look at him and say, man, that dude is completely diminished. Has he maybe backed off a little bit in terms of, his timing or his speed, or has the division maybe caught up to him a little bit? Like, yeah, there's some incredible athletes in the division. So I think he can still compete at an elite level, but you don't want to see a guy that was dominant just going out and kind of competing, right? You said it, I'm not a New York Yankees fan either, but it's weird when they're like 70 and 90 and battling around 500 or something. It just doesn't make sense. You're like, what's going on with that? You know what I mean? So it's a weird spot for him. Like, it's one of those guys that he has definitely earned the right to do whatever the hell he wants to do. If he's like, man, that one left a sour taste in my mouth and I'm not happy with it, I'm going out there and I'm doing something again, then you have to 100% support that decision. But if he's like, hey, man, I'm riding off into the sunset. Like, you know what, man, this is too much for me. The pressure's too much. The commitment is too much. I want to enjoy all this money I've made. I want to enjoy all this fame that I've created for myself. Then he has absolutely earned the right to do that, man. He's an all-time great. But as you said, it feels like he was at a crossroads and maybe he went down one path and we know where it is. So tough choices to be made for Israel Adesanya.
All right. Now, like I like to do, I throw it out. And now I'm going to even push back against you and myself. Alex Bahia, he's lost 4 of his last 5, right?
Yep.
And on its face, that looks horrible. It looks horrible to say you lost 4 of your last 5. All 4 are either champions or with Imavov setting up for a title shot or a title challenger, right? So you lost to Alex Bahia, then you beat Alex Bahia, then you lost to Sean Strickland, then you lost to DDP, and now you lost to Imavov, 4 of your last 5. That's not toiling with, the 6, 7, and 8 of the division. Those are all top 5 guys, top 3 guys, or champions. So
here's the tough part. So I told you I was working on my rankings. I did get through middleweight, right? Because I start kind of at the top of the card and work down. I haven't turned it in to the UFC yet, but I will do that shortly after we finish recording. I do have Israel Adesanya at number 4 right now. So my new rankings are Dricus Du Plessis at 1, or Dricus Du Plessis obviously champion. Sean Strickland is number 1 contender. Nassourdine Imavov as number 2. Khamzat Chimaev at number 3. I went ahead and brought Izzy below Khamzat Chimaev, even though they haven't competed yet. Izzy at 4, Robert Whittaker at 5. Then I go to Kyle Ohio at 6, Jared Cannonier. We could go all the way down. So that's where it does get interesting because there is a fresh matchup there for him, right? He could face Khamzat Chimaev if you want a new name, but does that go very well for him? Like, I don't think so. And then it was a beautiful story leading into it, right? Oh man, look, Izzy and Robert Whittaker are hanging out together and they're training together, and it was cool and it was amazing and 2 legends of sport. But that kind of rules out them being paired together, right? So.
And we don't want to see that a third time. It does nothing for either one.
No. So where do you go now? So now Kyle Ohio, I mean, and obviously Kyle Ohio, a man that's on the rise as well. He's one of those new names in the mix that's about to interject himself into the elite level of the division. And then you start getting down
and
to
another tank of a human at that division.
Oh my gosh, 100%. But then you start getting down to those familiar names, the Cannonier, the Vittoris, there's Brendan Allen. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. There are fresh, like I said, I still have him at number 4. So to look at a guy and say, you are the number 4 contender in the world in your division. Like, for most people, that's an incredible like just reaching number 4. Like, let's take away everything he did as champ and all the defenses. Like, literally for anybody on the face of the planet to be at one point in time, you were the number 4 ranked contender in the UFC in your division. That's incredible. You know what I mean? So that's why it's such a hard thing, because I don't want to look at him and say, like, done, washed up, over, he's gone. You know what I mean? But at that elite level, man, I don't know what's there for him right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said the crossroads was this fight. And, that's why I preference that, because I don't want to see him fight Rogelio. I don't want to see him fight Whittaker. That makes no sense. I don't want to see him fight Chimaev. I don't want anybody to make their name off of Izzy. Okay, That's what I don't want to see. What I do, here's the fight. I'll tell you what the fight is. Maynard Shelby, I got you.
Let's do it.
If Sean Strickland were to lose, Sean Strickland is Israel Adesanya rematch. Both top 5 contenders. That's the fight to make.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that would be a fight that you could co-main event a pay-per-view if you wanted to. I don't think people would be upset about that.
Of Abu Dhabi fight night.
100%. That could be a main event of a fight night easily. So I agree. And that would be a very, very relevant fight and an elite fight. Essentially, is it a number 1 contender fight at that point? I guess you got to make a decision whether or not that person is in the mix for a title shot. But it just, in terms of the history and what makes sense in the division, that's smart. Get through Saturday and see what's up. And, Israel did say, hey, man, I need to take some time. Anyways, it doesn't seem like he's necessarily in a rush to book something again, so you can let things unfold a little bit.
Timing would work out perfect though if that goes to fruition, and we'll talk about Strickland and
but I think I'm with you in that it's just I think about it's a weird thing, but it's like almost better to leave the sport sometimes a little bit too early than too late, right? I mean, you look at guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov and his undefeated record. And, I think as time wears on, some people are starting to say, well, did he have as many wins as he should have? But you can't take away 29.
But the legend keeps growing of him.
The legend keeps growing. George St. Pierre, obviously, he kind of perhaps left a little bit early. He had some more big fights in him, but, there he was, Cageside in Saudi Arabia. And I mean, a legend as well. And then I think of like Anderson Silva, who, again, if you are an old school fan like us and watch him in his prime, that dude was an absolute human cheat code. Like nobody, it was bizarre to see how much better he was than everybody else in his prime. But if you tune into the end, you see a lot of people that did make their name off of him, and a lot of people that got to say, I have a win over Anderson Silva.
Israel Adesanya for one.
And it's just, you don't want to see, I don't want to see Israel Adesanya become that guy, man. That dude is done too much. He's been too special. He's done so many incredible things. I'm kind of like you. Like, he owes nothing to the sport. If he wants to go out and collect some paychecks, or if he wants to go out and, he needs a win just so he can ride off into the sunset and feel good about it, he has every right to do that. But I'm like you. It make sense. Don't let somebody make your name off you, man. You've accomplished too much.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Nassourdine Imavov. I was I thought after like the third or fourth low calf kick that was he kind of was walking through those. I think if there was any mistake made that early in that second, or maybe just didn't have time to keep going back to that low calf kick. But man, he walked through the shots. He stayed. And again, that's how you have to fight Izzy. You have to stay in that range. You have to be all the way in or all the way out. He usually was all the way in, right? He was willing to engage. And you see tells when they start slow-moing, and on the one shot, and you could see that he was reading this shot that he eventually got on Izzy. And the reason I know he was reading it and setting it up is because it's his movement right after the shot landed. It was in slow motion. I don't know if you saw, he cocked that overhand right, lands flush in one motion, ducks, and throws a left right behind it. That missed because Izzy was falling.
Right.
But, he already had that. He is so good. He was already reading it. And he's like, here's my play. When I'm going to this tell, this read. Overhand right, slip, left hook. Now, thank goodness, honestly, thank goodness the left hook did not land, right? Because that would have been brutal as well. But this guy is so good. And you said it so right. He is just overlooked in this division. I take this back to when I had overlooked him until maybe 2 fights ago. In the Apex, he was the main event. I reffed on that card. Remember the whole Herb Dean incident?
Oh, yes.
And I was like, dude, this guy is legit. I mean, he is so damn good.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, he is a factor in the division now. He has moved himself into the elite status. It's funny, though. You talk about having the tells. But boy, that's one of the things that makes longevity so difficult, right, in this sport, is because there's so much footage on you. Guys are watching you. They're thinking about you. You know what I mean? Nobody's watching the number 20 ranked guy, over and over and watching his fights and looking for every little thing that they can glean from it. But when you're at the champ, when you're at the top, when you're defending titles, everybody in your division is watching you, and they're breaking down everything that you do, and they're getting every little read, and they're like, I've seen him make that move before. And it's hard. It's damn near impossible not to have patterns, in the way that you compete, in the way that you fight. It's muscle memory, right? And it's psychological in the way that you approach things. You're doing things, and you tend to set patterns that people are able to read. But Imavov, man, he nailed it, and he's a guy that deserves he deserves recognition at this point. You have to. You can't take it away from him. This win streak that he's on right now is impressive. Adesanya, Allen, Cannonier in a row, throwing Delitze as well. I think Delitze is a guy that kind of gets overlooked as well sometimes in the division. I mean, tough opponents, and he's got wins over all of them. He matters in the division, and he's got to be sitting around waiting to see how all this stuff shakes out at middleweight as well, because he's right there at the top of it too.
Yeah, his last loss was back in 2023, January 2023 against Sean Strickland. That was 6 fights ago.
Yep.
And Sean Strickland is just that guy that gives everybody problems with the fighting style and whatnot. So that's his only loss. He had the no contest accidental head clash with Chris Curtis, which then led to, his big run-in with him during the Delitze fight.
Yeah.
But one thing that has stuck out, and he's almost somewhat mirroring Israel Adesanya's activity level. The activity level of this guy is next level right now. And I'm just gonna kind of start reading off some things, right? So September of 22, Buckley. January of 23, Strickland. June of 23, Chris Curtis. February of 24, right? So not too much time passed there. February of 24, Delitze. June of 24, Cannonier. September of 24, Brendan Allen. February 1st of 25, Izzy. If we take it back, but let's just go back 1 year. That's 4 fights in under 1 year. Under 1 year. That's a lot.
Yeah, especially at that level, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing if you're just making your way in and you're like, man, I just got here. You know, obviously the money has changed for me coming off the regional level to the UFC. I need to fight as often as possible. But you're fighting, you know, lower tier guys. Not to say that they're not difficult opponents. There are. Everybody in the UFC is good. But it's easier, I think, to stay that active when you're a little bit of a lower level and you're facing a lower tier of opponent. To be as active as he is at a high level against elite tier competition, that is not easy to do. But it's helpful. It's so beneficial. That's how you move up the ranks. That's how you make a name for yourself. That's how you start making moves. And, you know, before he kind of went on this last round, you know, the loss against Strickland, before that, I don't think people were looking at him at all. I mean, the Joaquin Buckley, obviously that win has aged very well. But I don't think people were necessarily talking about this guy, but it was the ability to keep taking those big names and to do it quickly that has helped this man move forward.
So now, you know, obviously we know what he wants. He wants a title shot. And everything is a what have you done for me lately? Everybody's like, all right, he gets the winner. But we do got this guy Chimaev out there. So really it's now, what does the UFC want? Do they want to thrust Chimaev into a title shot? Or do they want a true number one contender? That's the question. What is going to happen? Do they want a true number one contender? Because if they do, then you need to make the Imavov Chimaev fight.
Yes. It's interesting, right? And I know we're going to talk about UFC 312 this weekend, but maybe it almost comes down to that, right? Because what happens if Sean Strickland wins, but it's another 5-round, razor thin, people debating the decision, right? At that point, do you go, sorry, Dricus, you know, you got yours. You know, he had to work back to you, so whatever, you got to go. I don't know. At that point, it becomes a lot easier to make Imavov and Chimaev, right? Because at that point, you probably have to go trilogy with DDP and Sean Strickland. So maybe a lot of it boils down to what happens on Saturday in Australia. But I'm with you. If you're looking for who has earned the right, if basically, you know, we get through this weekend and for whatever reason the trilogy doesn't need to happen or time doesn't work, and basically we're looking at the winner of this weekend, the reigning champion, has two options. Is it Imavov or is it Chimaev? It's an interesting one because, you know, we always talk about what's earned and we always talk about what's good for business as well, right? And Imavov, I think, has earned it. If we're looking down to who has earned the right to fight for the title next, based on their performances, based on their wins at 185 pounds, it's Nassourdine Imavov. Now, if we're talking a year ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, Khamzat Chimaev's stock was at an all-time high, right? And I don't know that, you know, his stock is at that all-time high right now, but, you know, it's in much the same way we're saying that Sean Strickland is about to start selling a fight on Fight Week. When Chimaev starts talking and they start playing those highlight reels and he starts getting in some press conferences, all of a sudden you start getting really, really excited. So I still would say that Khamzat Chimaev's name and star power is bigger than Nassourdine Imavov's at this point. So that'll be a really interesting decision if the UFC has to make it, because do you lean in the direction of who deserves it more in terms of what they've done and in terms of the results, or do you understand that you're a business that has to make money, that has investors, that has owners, that needs to see profits? And at that point, I think you lean towards Chimaev.
Well, I think here's what you do. Let's just hypothetically speak. We're going to get on the fight because I think Sean Strickland has a real shot at winning this fight, like a real shot at winning this fight.
Yes.
But let's just say he doesn't.
Okay.
Then the UFC, it's set up perfect for the UFC. You have his next two opponents. You know,
so you go both of them. You just have
you go Chimaev
for the other.
You know, if Chimaev, whoever wins between Chimaev and DDP, then Imavov. Then that gives DDP, to whether it's a really close fight or not, gives him the opportunity to work back, wait a little bit. I mean, it sets up perfect in my opinion.
But you said right away, and I was going to ask you, I think you already tipped your hand a little bit. You go Chimaev first. If you're sitting in the war room making the decisions, you're going Chimaev first. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you do. And
that's why it's like, what does the UFC want to do? Do they want a true number one contender? And it also is like DDP, who has, you know, he's been very active as well. He has been
Yes.
very active. If he comes out and says, I need to take 8 months off, then you know what you're doing too.
Interim
He's
title
like, hey
fight.
man, I need to get a quick shoulder, then it's set up really nicely for the UFC is what I'm saying. Either way, they have a lot of options right now where they have no options at heavyweight. They have a ton at the top of the division in middleweight.
It's literally what I was just thinking as you were saying that. I'm like, so it's the opposite of heavyweight, basically.
Right.
Like that's the place. That's the place to be. We're like, oh, bro, we could go this way. If option A doesn't work, oh man, B is looking pretty good too. And you know what? If B doesn't work out, we can go option C over here as well. That's looking nice and tasty as well. So you're right. The middleweight division is in a really good position right now for the UFC.
Yeah. Now, let's just go ahead. Let's move to this weekend. And as you said, it's really getting no pub right now. But let's be honest, a lot don't, unless it's this blockbuster that we're looking at a month in advance. Most don't until the week of anyways.
Right.
And you got Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2, from Sydney, which may bode well for Strickland, even though he says, why do you keep sending me to countries where their governments hate me? Which is funny, which is hysterical to me. But this is a very interesting fight.
Yes.
It's hard to make heads or tails of it. Do I think DDP is going to try and take him down? I think he's going to try. Sean Strickland doesn't really get submitted. He doesn't get tired. He is really good at weaponizing his cardio, getting back up to the feet. If he does get taken down, he has a great ability to get right back up. Do I think DDP is going to be able to hold him on the ground? No. But the options are there. But I think that's just going to drain DDP. I think Dricus, as though he always says he has a rested exhaustion face. Like instead of a resting bitch face, I've always coined it. He has a resting exhaustion face. He is in spectacular shape, and he always claims that he doesn't get overly tired in fights, other than his expression looking the exact opposite. But do you want to tax yourself that way? Would Dricus want to do it? And I just don't think he will. I think he's got confidence in his hands. I think he's got confidence in his awkward style, and he does not get pushed back very easily. Here's who wins this fight to me is who can dictate the center of the cage. That's where the fight's won for me.
It's interesting, man, because, I said off the top, I both these title fights, I love both these title fights. And I think you and I both pride ourselves in being able to sit here on a pay-per-view fight week and give some insight into like, hey, obviously the thing we love about mixed martial arts is anything can happen in a fight, but here's what you're probably going to see. And I'm with you. I don't necessarily know who's going to win this fight. And I think you're right about it, because I think of Dricus as the more dynamic guy, right? I feel like he has more. I think, if you tell me, John, this fight's ending in knockout. Oh, DDP won then? You know what I mean? Because I don't see Sean Strickland knocking out Dricus Du Plessis. Do I think that he could outpace him over 5 rounds? Absolutely. Do I think Sean Strickland is going to take Dricus to the ground and submit him? I do not. I believe Dricus is the more powerful guy. I believe, as you said, he's going to be looking for the takedowns. But I also don't believe that Dricus can execute at 100% for 5 rounds. I just don't. I feel like, I know he says it. I know he says, guys, I just look tired, but I'm not tired. Okay, maybe, but I don't know. I just don't think.
He did stop Izzy with the rear naked choke in round number 4. Just FYI.
He did. So but I just, not Sean Strickland. I just don't see him being able to outpace Sean Strickland over the course of 5
Agree.
rounds.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
You see what I'm saying? So I feel like he has to pick his spots. And so knowing that he has to pick his spots, and knowing how good defensively Sean Strickland is, and knowing how it just presents challenges. So I'm having difficulty envisioning exactly how this thing plays out, because I see both guys as having paths to success, but both of them having paths to success that have real barriers by their opponents. So I love this. And then that's before you even add in the history. That's before you add in the fact that we've seen this fight, and that it was a damn good fight, and that it was a real close fight, and that, to be honest with you, I didn't think was it was tight. I didn't think it was controversial. I leaned toward Dricus Du Plessis in the first fight as well. but I thought it was a really damn good fight. They both know each other well. They've had 25 minutes with each other. We talk about the tape that's out when you're at an elite level. These guys have both seen a ton of tape on each other. They've been fighting at the elite level. I think they've established who they are as athletes. This is a tough one, man. This is a really, really tough fight, man. And I am torn on who I think walks away with it. But I believe, as you said, kind of off the top, Sean Strickland has a really, really good chance of winning this fight. Like, if for some reason you watch the first fight and you think that was Sean Strickland's best chance, and in the rematch, we've already seen this, we know what's going to happen. I don't see it that way, man. I see this. I think this is going to be another potentially 25-minute razor-thin back-and-forth battle, and I'm looking forward to it, man.
I usually don't tip my hand too much. Sometimes I make some wild call-outs. Some true. Some have failed miserably. I think Sean Strickland gets it done on Saturday. Yeah. And this is why. I think Sean Strickland, for as much of the chaoticness that he lives in and the chaotic nature in which he speaks, some has great valid points and some are so far out of left field. I don't think that Sean Strickland is dumb.
Right.
I think Sean Strickland is a tremendously smart guy, sometimes woefully misguided, sometimes completely on point. With that being said, volume is what did him in last time. I do not think Sean Strickland is going to make that mistake again. You know what really won Sean Strickland the title? Pressure and volume.
Yep.
And volume is what did him in last time, because a lot of times we say he weaponizes that pace. He weaponizes the pace a lot by walking people down. And in the last couple of fights, I hadn't seen that tremendous volume at him while walking somebody down. I think we see it Saturday night, and I think that is what the difference. Do I think he's going to hurt Dricus, like overly hurt him? I don't. Do I think Dricus could potentially hurt Strickland? I do. But I think the volume and the walking down and the pressure and not giving an inch. And when Dricus does something wild and reverses position, Sean Strickland just walks him down again. And that just adds up and it adds up and it adds up. Now, if you throw the volume behind just the walking down, that's the key to victory. And I think Sean Strickland is smart enough to have recognized that. And I think that's what gets him done in a close but somewhat running away victory.
It's funny, man. It's funny to me how often you and I kind of see things in similar fashions before we ever talk about it. And I'm feeling so much that way, right? Because, and look, you talk about, all those things that Sean Strickland, let's go ahead and add Eric Nixick to the equation as well. The entire team over there, Extreme Couture, a lot of intelligent minds that are breaking down things and that are honest. And I think that's so important sometimes, is being honest about where your shortcomings were, where the opportunities were. And Sean Strickland has every opportunity to win this fight by doing exactly what you say. So that's why I say, over time, I don't believe, and I guess maybe that's kind of what I was alluding to as well when I say I don't believe Dricus can match that pace of Strickland for 25 minutes. So because of that, I know that he's going to lose some rounds. If this fight goes to a decision, I don't see any way that it's 50-45 Dricus Du Plessis. I just don't. No, you know what I mean?
Unless Sean Strickland does what he may have done in the last couple fights. Like, I've been a little bit disappointed in his volume output in the last couple fights. And so I just don't see him making that mistake again at all.
I agree. That's why I think this is going to be tight. That's what's going to make this interesting. Because, again, I think the biggest moment – and look, you and I are basically like head of the DDP fan club, right? You know what I mean? Every time we talk about Dricus Du Plessis, we're like, that – handsome, well-speaking brute of a man. You know what I mean?
It's like, man, I hate that he has every freaking intangible that God can give somebody. He has it, and it pisses me off. But I like the guy, man.
Oh,
dude, he's utterly respectful. He gave Izzy his jacket. Remember?
I love the guy, man.
Jacket, man. I want you to have this. Like, he's a good dude, man.
He really is, man. I love Dricus Du Plessis. And again, I think Dricus Du Plessis will have the bigger moments. And because he has the bigger moments, I do think if this fight ends in a stoppage, it's probably him that gets it. But Sean Strickland is so hard to stop. And I agree with you. Sean will walk forward, and I think he realizes I got to have the output now. I got to have the volume. That's what's going to make this difficult for DDP. He will get tired. And And again, and I know DDP says I'm not tired, but boy, he gives you those visual indicators that he is. And I think Sean Strickland feeds off stuff like that, like seeing that he's breaking somebody, whether he is or not.
Melting somebody mentally.
Right?
Like he
you
melted,
know what I mean?
In my opinion, he melted Izzy mentally.
Indeed, 100% he did, and he loves that stuff, man. He lives on that stuff, so I think that'll only fuel Strickland to get better and better and better as this fight wears on. So I'm incredibly intrigued by this fight. I tend to lean towards. I mean, this is what I love. These are the fights I love the most, man. The fights I love the most are when the styles come together to make it intriguing, and then on top of that, we're adding a UFC title. We're adding the highest level of the sport between two guys whose styles match up in such a way that I'm like, man, I can make a case for fighter A, and man, I can make a case for fighter B, and I'm just not sure which way it's going to go, but I can't wait to watch it unfold. I think that's what we're going to see here, and it's going to be a test of wills. It's going to be a test of mental strength along with physical skills as well. So I love this. I would not be shocked to see Dricus walk away as champ. I would not be shocked to see Sean Strickland walk away with the title either. So I'm loving this fight on Saturday.
I think Dricus needs to turn this into a grappling match and not necessarily on the ground. I think he needs to turn it into a grappling, get into the clinch, agree. Use that size and strength and put him against the cage, hold him there, rough up the body a little bit at that point, like, and just accrue those points, accrue those rounds in that way.
I think you're so right about that. I think if you're a Dricus Du Plessis fan, or you're just waiting to see how this goes. If he can win, because again, we're talking about, this fight is so razor thin that we're talking about a round or two making all the difference. Obviously in a 5-round fight it will. But if Dricus can win a round where essentially he's not an offensive behemoth, but he's actually just kind of stalling and clinching and slowing things down. If he can win a round like that, because again, we agree that he's not going 100% of Sean Strickland's speed for 5 rounds. So if he can have a round where I'm not saying he takes off, but he's not exerting full energy for 5 minutes and he's still able to put that in the bank, that'll be key along the way. Because again, I think he'll have the bigger moments. I think he will have the moments that judges go, well, he was closer to finishing there. So in the moments that he does have this explosiveness in his outputs, those will be his. But if he can win those grinding rounds, that'll be massive for Dricus Du Plessis.
Yeah, and I 100%. We're on the same page there. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Strickland right out the gates can start walking him down. And if he can, this is going to be a hell of a fight. And if he can't, it's a matter of when can he start walking him down. Yep.
I love it. I cannot wait for this. Now, I'm anxious to hear what you think about the co-main as well, because as intrigued as I am by the main event, can I lay out why I'm so intrigued by the co-main event as well? Because Tatiana Suarez, to me, when I first saw her come into the UFC, I'm like, champ, like that, like she's going to be a champ. Her wrestling is so good on a different level, right? The female Habib, everybody was saying she's the female Habib. And it's funny because that kind of tells you how long ago, because it's been a while since Habib was Habib, right? The legend grows, but the domination in the cage has been further and further back over time. But that's when Tatiana Suarez came in. She was the female Habib. She was going to be, to me, I said future champ, no question about it. She's had to deal with some injuries. Now, look, her story is incredible. Dealt with cancer. You know what I mean? You can certainly relate to that, right? You battle through something like that, you're a certain kind of a person. She's gone through that. She's gone through a neck injury. She's gone through a knee injury. She's like, I'm not stopping. I'm not quitting. I know what I'm going after. I'm chasing after. I'm going to get there. And now she's here, right? Zhang Weili, had this matchup happened a few years ago, I would be like, man, Zhang is awesome. We're always going to think of Zhang Weili and Joanna and Jacek, one of the greatest fights of all time. I always say, if you call that one of the greatest female fights of all time, you're doing it a disservice, because now you're putting it in a category it doesn't need to be in. It was just one of the greatest fights of all time of any people we've ever seen. Unbelievable. But at that point, I did not believe that her grappling was on par with Tatiana Suarez. Now, I still don't believe her grappling is on par with Tatiana Suarez, but I believe it's improved since then. And I believe that Zhang Weili's strength and just the physicality of who she is as an athlete gives her a lot of chances against Tatiana Suarez, even if the technique isn't necessarily there. It's not the same. The physicality can sometimes make up for lack of technique, right? We do know that. So because of that, I'm not sure. Like, I'm leaning Tatiana Suarez in this fight, but I'm not sure if it's my bias of just always believing she was going to be a champ and thinking that that's who she is. And maybe I'm not updating my evaluation of her given the time that's passed, given the injuries that she's dealt with, and also given the improvements that Zhang Weili has. So I always respect and appreciate your breakdowns of fights, and I'm curious to think what you think about this co-main event.
I think these two ladies are in the same weight division, but I don't think they're going to look like they're in the same weight division in that cage on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Right?
This is true.
Here's the X factor. She hasn't fought since. God, I mean, look at it. I was at the card. It was a Nashville event. I worked it.
Wow.
What was the date on that?
Has it been that long, that event? Let's see.
Had to be July
August,
of 23.
August of 2023. So yeah, a year and a year and a half. A year and a half. And by the way, I mean, and that's why I wonder about my bias. She beat Jessica Andrade in August of 23. She beat Montana De La Rosa in February 23. You know what she fought before that? 2019. She's had 2 fights in almost 6 years. That's insane.
Okay. Let's say everybody is peak form, vintage. Timing is perfect. I think Suarez submits her in round number 2.
Yes.
And here's where I'm going to go with it. All right. So I think she's going to be the bigger fighter, especially fight night.
Yep.
And I think, as you said, her wrestling and her grappling is spectacular. I think when Zhang Weili takes her, I just don't think that she's going to be able to physically handle that as well. Now, technique is going to offset that a lot. So with that being said, but let's look back one fight ago when Zhang Weili fought Yan Jinan. It was a grappling match.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have that in this fight. If you do have that, you are giving yourself the not best path to victory, let's say. Yep. Or better way of saying it is you are giving Suarez her best path to victory.
Yep.
By taking it there. Whether you can win there or not, it's irrelevant. But let's put you in the best case scenario. Best case scenario is keeping it on the feet. I don't think she can. I think she can, but I don't necessarily know, and I don't think she's going to have the power to offset the aggression that Tatiana is going to come in and be relentlessly going after that takedown. And then when it gets down to the mat, a lot of times both these women are on very high level grappling. And so they say, speed and power, like jiu-jitsu can offset that. Yeah. If both things are not equal, but if both things are equal, bam, it elevates one person higher. And I think that's where this fight goes. And I think Suarez gets it done 2-3, maybe 4.
I agree. I think you're spot on. Like I said, you and I think about mixed martial arts a lot the same way, and that, it's not to say, if you're in the camp of Zhang Weili, it's not that you're saying, well, if this fight hits the ground, there's no way we can ever win that fight. No, you can. You're a high level athlete. You've competed at a high level. You're an elite level world class athlete, perhaps, but you're looking for the path of least resistance, right? You're looking for the best place for you to be. And the best place for her to be is to be on the feet, sticking and moving. It's like, hey, if Tatiana puts her hands on you, don't worry about anything else other than just disengaging, getting away, and getting back to the center of the cage, right? I don't want you in the fence. I don't want you in clinch battles. I don't want you working there. I want you getting away as fast as possible, throwing some leg kicks maybe, peppering a little bit, but just sticking and moving, that sort of thing. I don't know if she can execute that, though, man. I just feel like Suarez's grappling is on a different level. So, but you nailed it. The X factor is we just haven't seen it. And I think that's why again, if this was 2019 and this fight is happening, I'm like, go take your mortgage payment. If this was immediately following the Andrade fight,
yep. I think Suarez would be. What's the line on this? Do you have the line?
Basically even. Yeah, it's basically a pick 'em at this point. I mean, it's
Suarez is the favorite though. -122 on
-120. Yeah, really, really even. Which I like to see the respect that she's getting in that spot. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, if it was then, I say, hey, go take your mortgage payment right now. Empty out your 401k because it's free money. You know what I'm saying? Like, just go throw it all in Suarez. But I just don't think it is free money anymore, man. I think this is a very difficult fight. but she has proven herself to be a warrior in some very difficult situations in life, inside and outside of the cage. So I think she's special. I think she wins this fight, but I'm less just feeling like it's a certainty than I was before because of the inconsistency, because of the layoffs, and because, to be honest, I think Zhang Weili has really improved as well, man. I think she's really made strides in her game, man. I think she's we've seen the phenomenal fighter that she is, and she's just a fantastic athlete as well. So, man, I'm again, the card is taking some heat, and I get it. I do understand. If you look full up and down this, it's, you may be able to make a case that there were, more kind of fights that really got your interest, even on this fight night in Saudi Arabia. There's some names that you're going to look at, and it's going to be an entertaining night, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll be watching it on a plane. I'm actually calling I'm working on the production team with college wrestling this Saturday between Oklahoma State and Little Rock, and I'll jump on a plane and be watching on the way home. But these two title fights, man, I love when there's intrigue in title fights and when there's uncertainty in title fights. Because, again, UFC championship matchups are the highest level. And when the styles come together where they really speak to you and they really make it difficult to ascertain who's going to win, that's when I get excited, man. So, say what you will about the card as a whole. That's fine. I get it. I understand. Don't judge it till afterwards. And cards can still be entertaining, even if going into them, you don't necessarily look at it and be like, oh, this is my favorite card of the year. But these two title fights have got my attention, man. They have got my attention. I'm excited.
Let me ask you a question. Now, I may be completely out of my mind here because it has been so long since we seen Suarez in the cage. If you were to say her and Rose are in the same weight class, she's just a lot bigger, isn't she?
She is.
She's a lot bigger of a woman. I remember I was in her rules meeting. I actually went into the rules meeting where she fought Andrade. I went into the rules meeting and with Kevin McDonald, by the way.
Nice.
And I just remember thinking, she's a lot bigger than that weight class says she is. I remember vividly thinking that because a lot of times you don't get references on television, but in person you do. You know what I mean? And so I just think she's going to be the bigger, stronger fighter. And when a lot of things are equal, that does play into account.
I agree. No, she is. She's, like you said, if you told me she was fighting for the flyweight title, I'd be like, yeah, man. If you told me she was fighting for the bantamweight title, I might be like, well, that's a little big for her, but she could be there. She is. She's a big, strong, powerful athlete, hardest worker in the room. Her and Patchy Mix, what a couple that is, man. If they end up having kids together, go ahead and just hand them some UFC titles at birth. You know what I mean? Just go ahead and give them right away. So I'm excited, man. I really am. But man, I have all the respect in the world for Zhang Weili, man. I think she is such an absolute warrior and an amazing fighter as well. So I love these two title fights, man. I really, really am excited about both these. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Me as well. I'm looking forward to it. Great week, great card just this past weekend. Remains to be seen. A little bit of top heavy, just the top two card fight on the card is what's piquing a lot of people's interest. But like I said, more often than not, these cards deliver. And listen, this pay-per-view, UFC knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
They know exactly what they're doing. This is there's developing names that need opportunities to fight, and they're going to go out and they're going to deliver, and it's going to be a good time. But they knew that all the attention was going to be coming out of these two title fights, and it is, especially the main. Obviously, you said it. We're just starting the week off. We're going to get some press conferences. We're going to get some media days. We're going to get some face-offs. DDP, Sean Strickland, the buzz is going to be building around those two. They're not afraid to say a little something on a mic and get up at you. They'll move children out of the way and go fight in a crowd if they have to. They'll just they'll do what they got to do, man. They'll throw down. So it's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to this one.
Well, awesome. You have Missouri Little Rock this weekend?
Yeah, it's Oklahoma State and Little Rock, actually. So a chance to see the Cowboys. David Taylor, what he's doing with Oklahoma State is incredible. He was actually part of our broadcast team last year, so it's kind of cool to see the Magic Man and what he's building with that program. And Little Rock, can't say enough about their facilities, can't say enough about the team and the program they're building. I just look, it's going to be a tough challenge for him. Oklahoma State, number 3 in the country, a powerhouse program throughout the history of college wrestling. But for Little Rock to go from not even having a team 6 years ago to now being ranked and competing on UFC Fight Pass, man, it's pretty cool. So I'm excited to be on that one. My man Justin James will be there with Shane Sparks. I'm going to be in the truck on this one. So I'm looking forward to it as well, man. We're starting to wrap up match day. It's been a hell of a year for sure, man.
I wish I could go. That was one that earmarked to go, but I just have a Grizzlies game that Saturday night, so I'm not going to be able to make it. But then the following week, I'll touch on this Attitude MMA on the LFA Fight Network.
Is there NBA going on? I didn't know. I didn't know there was stuff happening in the world of NBA. As a
Mavs fan,
as a Dallas native, some headline. What a crazy day that was yesterday. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't make it out there. But
that you could go a lot of different directions, whether you like or hate that trade. I personally, I think it benefits both teams, one short term and one long term.
It's interesting, right, man? It's obviously we talk about mixed martial arts and we focus on that sport, but man, that was a trade I feel like that kind of transcended like just general sports, man. That was just,
you didn't realize it was the first time in NBA history that two all NBA players were traded for each other during the season. First time in NBA history. Never happened before. So it did transcend a lot of things.
It really did, man. I felt like that was one of those ones that just came out of nowhere. A lot of times you hear about trades and it's about, well, you kind of knew there was some interviews where somebody sounded disgruntled or some you know what I mean? You kind of felt like it was all leading. So this was one that felt like it came out of nowhere. And I think you're right, man. I've seen some reactions. It's just like, oh my God, what is this? This is ridiculous. To maybe a little bit more savvy and crafty than people believe. So that was a big one. So unfortunately, you can't join us out there in Little Rock, but it should be a good matchup. And like I said, it's we get to tee things up. What a great. That's why I said I love these, man. Like last weekend, I got to watch and hang out in my hotel room and see the UFC in Saudi Arabia while I was working on my notes for CFFC and kind of getting my final broadcast prep together. So I got to do all that. Now it's the other way around. I get to work on some college wrestling, and then after my work day is done, I get to just hang out and watch a UFC event pay-per-view, which I'm looking forward to, man. So love it, man. Love weekends like this.
Yeah, let's go. Fights. I love watching humans. I just love watching humans fight each other.
I know, right?
It's
just who we are. It's just who we are. Just like I like seeing people punch each other, or other various forms of combat sports.
All right, let's go. Well, with that being said, I'm Eric McMahon, but for John Morgan, enjoy the fights.